Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Tiago Forte wants us to build a second brain. Let's find out why. Tiago, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, great to be here, Bill.
Now, you've written a book with that title, Building a Second Brain, and you call readers information hoarders. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, an information hoarder is someone who opens countless tabs on their browser, who saves countless bookmarks, has files strewn across their computer desktop or their downloads folder. Their documents folder on their computer is maybe a giant morass of hundreds, maybe even thousands of files and folders. They tend to buy all sorts of books, possibly not finish them or maybe not even start them. They tend to save all sorts of reading material that they have trouble getting to. They sign up for courses and classes and seminars that they never seem to get around to. It's sort of just like we have house hoarders who fill their home with objects, physical objects. We now have the phenomenon of digital hoarding, where we do much the same thing with our digital lives.
Okay, now you've just proven to me you're either psychic or you have a video camera in my basement, because you've just described my life. So you better have some cures for this today, because now you're getting me a little scared.
Yeah, we all feel like we're alone. We feel like we're uniquely flawed in this regard. Part of my mission is to bring us all together so we realize that this is something many people do.
Now, I read in your book that building a second brain is based on recent advancements in something called PKM. Can you tell us what that is and where that fits into the world of science and success, etc.?
Absolutely. PKM is an academic field. It has academic papers, entire journals. It has academic conferences. There's courses you can take. You can get a degree in it. A previous version of it was called PIM, Personal Information Management. So you'll find it under that name too. But it's basically the science of how human beings gather, relate to, make sense of, and interact with knowledge. And my particular niche, the kind of knowledge that I'm most interested in, is digital content, is text, images, links, bookmarks, audio files, video files, notes, references that we find online.
And just so our audience knows, you actually explain this to major businesses, professionals, students, people who are studying in the highest business schools, etc., because businesses use this because it obviously saves them money, makes them money, and is very valuable. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we live in a knowledge economy. We live in an idea-based economy. So whatever kind of business you run, I can pretty much say unequivocally, your most valuable asset, your most important resource is your knowledge, and your knowledge resides mostly in your people, right? The people and the systems and the software and the documents and files that exist within your organization. So yeah, it's really amazing because on one hand, this is a new field, and on the other hand, it's not new at all. Some of the top performing organizations in the world know this and they're using it. As an example, I consulted with a team at Toyota, one of the most innovative automakers. They're using it to be more effective at management, right? Think about how much knowledge you need to be an effective manager at a large corporation. I've consulted with companies like Genentech. Genentech, at least at the time, was the most profitable company on a per employee basis in the entire country. They made more money per employee than anyone else. So you can imagine they need to maximally leverage their people that are producing so much value. And even organizations like the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank. In one of my trainings, I had the U.S. Treasurer. If you take out a dollar bill, the signature on the dollar bills that were printed between, I think, 2000 and 2008, have her signature. She was in my training learning about PKM. So I kind of feel like I'm getting knowledge that is secretly known within high performing organizations and just democratizing it. I'm spreading the word to, the rest of us.
So building a second brain, this isn't something we're going to find on late night TV. And but wait, there's more. If you order right now, you'll get 2 copies of your book or a free toothpaste or a watch with it or something like that. This is legitimate. This is a science, and major businesses and corporations and management is using this all over the place.
Oh, absolutely. I may get to the late night infomercials one day. That's an aspiration. But no, this is it's really coming from the upper echelons of academia, of business, of entrepreneurship, of Silicon Valley. And it's an exciting frontier of technology, which we can also talk about, that is really producing results for some of these high-performing teams.
Now, if you were just coming into an office and you send your book ahead and building a second brain, it looks nice, it looks legitimate, everything. How would you sell me on it? In other words, I guess we would call it an elevator pitch or something of the like. You only have a minute or two, otherwise I'm going to see the next person who comes in after you. But this is either a doctor's office or a chain of dental offices or lawyers, title companies, something like that. How does building a second brain help on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, my elevator pitch would just be, there is no greater asset than your people and your people's knowledge to capitalize, to leverage all that value that you've painstakingly gathered through hard experience. You have to document, capture that knowledge in some concrete form. You have to organize it. You have to distill it down to key takeaways, key lessons, key principles. And then you have to propagate. You have to distribute that knowledge from individuals to the organization as a whole if you want to be more productive, if you want people to be fulfilled, not having to reinvent the wheel again and again, if you want to learn from past mistakes, if you want to have a reputation and a network as someone who thinks, meaningful thoughts. All of that requires, being more intentional and strategic about what you do with your knowledge.
Now, I'm going to tell our audience something that took me back as I was looking at your book, and I kidded you before the show. I started reading it. I said, oh, this is really interesting. This is the new high-tech computer age. And then I read a sentence that said, the key is writing things down. I said, writing things down? They're going to think I'm an old fogey, which I am, but you're not. So is this really what it is? Handwriting something down, taking notes? Is that what this is about?
It is and it isn't. So
there's a safe answer.
Yeah, right. So here's the thing. PKM, or also known as digital note-taking, or also known as a second brain, half of it is this sophisticated, futuristic, highly technical, technological frontier, as we've discussed. But the other half, just as important, is an ancient, absolutely ancient, timeless series of principles, which have to do with note-taking, which have to do with writing things down, the power of writing, which have to do with getting ideas out of your head and into external media, right? So if you look at the word note is among the 2% oldest words in the English language. It's one of our most ancient words. If you go back to some of the earliest writing, like in Babylon, right, in the Fertile Crescent, our earliest examples were basically note-taking, was merchants writing down, how many bushels of wheat they had grown or things like that. So, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're really getting note-taking, which has existed for centuries, for millennia, but we're reinventing it. We're making it digital. We're making it searchable. Once it becomes digital, it becomes searchable. It becomes linkable. You can link two different ideas together. You can sync them across all your different devices. You can share them with anyone in the world, collaborate on those ideas. It's like once our knowledge, our notes become digital, once we turn them into digital form, suddenly we get all these incredible new superpowers. And I think that's the future of note-taking that we're entering.
Now, I read something in your book, and we all feel there's so much we're getting hit with today. When I come into the studio, I see people in a car flipping through their phone before they even get out of the car. They'll walk the 50 yards from the parking lot to the studio. They'll take their phone out, check it again. Either it's a news feed or an email or a tweet or something they're looking at. And you actually put some numbers down in your book, and one of them that I copied, that we have something like 5 times the consumption of information that we had in 1986, which, if I'm doing my math correct, that's about 35 to 40 years ago. Not really a long time for some of us, right in our lifetime. And this is 5 times the amount of information that we're handling. And I almost kind of think the more I read your book, that might be on the low end.
Yeah.
That there's really even more because we flip on the TV. We have the radio in the background. You go in the barbershop, the department store, the doctor's office. There's media on. There's computers. There's TVs, virtually any type of news feed we can get. So essentially, we have to digest all this and make sense of it by the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. It's staggering. I mean, what's most amazing about those numbers is the rate has not plateaued. It's not leveled off. It's accelerating. So the curve of information consumption looks like this, exponential graph, this exponential line. So it's almost like even if you survived up until now with your information management habits, what's coming down the pipe is going to be even far more overwhelming, far more difficult. I think a lot of my work is really about waking up to this new reality that it's not going to, the information tide is not going to recede. It's not going to get easier. It's not going to lessen. It's only going to increase. So we have to change. We have to change our relationship to information.
Now, one of the things, Tiago, at this point in the show, I just want to let our listeners know that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Tiago Forte, that's Forte. His book is Building a Second Brain, and we're going to ask him, Tiago, where can we get this book, and is there a website where we can get more information about it?
Yes, you can find everything out at buildingasecondbrain.com. That has all the information, all the sales outlets and everything. The book is published by Simon & Schuster in the United States. So you should be able to find it, of course, on all the usual websites, Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and also really most major bookstores in your city, in your town should carry it.
And again, the title is Building a Second Brain. It's by our guest, Tiago, Forte. And as always, we'll give you that information later in the show again, in fact, several times. So if you didn't get it down, you may want to jot it down someplace because you're going to be talking about it or hearing his name and saying, wait a minute, where did I hear that before? And this will be your beginning of getting control over all that information that's coming into your life. Now, I took right out of your book a quote that said, we're surrounded by knowledge, but starving for wisdom. How does this help us get that wisdom that we're starving for?
Yeah, great question. So the way I think about it kind of in technical terms is, people are constantly sending you information, sending you knowledge, right? Think about how many sources of advice we have, right? This podcast is a lot of advice. All the podcasts are giving advice, all the blog posts, all the social media posts, all the books. There's all these ideas and suggestions and, secrets and takeaways and tools and techniques. But I think there's one definition of wisdom that is quite straightforward, which is just distilled and applied knowledge. It's knowledge that you received probably from some outside source. You distilled it down to some essential takeaway, some essential point, and then you tried it. You put it to use in your life, in your business, in your marriage, with your kids, and then you either proved that it works, that it's effective, or you discovered that it was not effective.
I'm just wondering, as you're telling us about this, when you give a seminar now, you're talking to, again, the top business leaders. They're not putting the lower level people with, maybe they are, but obviously they want their managers to know this and their upper corporate offices. What is the reaction you get from them? Like, I wish I knew this 20 years ago, or why didn't someone tell me this before today? Or can I get an app for that? Or what are they looking for?
All the above. But yeah, they do often say it's kind of like investing. This is kind of like investing for your ideas. The same way that everyone usually says, oh, I wish I'd started investing, when I was in my 20s, when I was in my teens, when I was a kid, because then the compounding effects would have had more time to build, right? The same is true of ideas. So many people say, wow, I've had so many ideas, amazing insights, amazing theories about the world over my career, over my lifetime, but I can't point to them. I can't say what they were. I can't reference them. They're just sort of lost. And so one of the most common reactions is definitely, I wish this was, actually many people say, I wish this was taught in school, right? They taught me biology and math and, different subjects, English, but no one ever taught me how to how to preserve what I learned, how to learn more effectively, how to take notes so that I could reference those notes rather than try to remember everything with my first brain.
I was going to ask you that question. Is this something that either high schools are getting into, or maybe the more advanced colleges, the Ivy Leagues, the ones that are usually ahead of the curve, saying, wait, it doesn't matter how much we teach, it's how much they're going to retain. Let's show them how to retain more. And even if it takes a day or two at the beginning of a semester, or if it hasn't been done before, is this something coming into the schools? Are we going to see it there?
We've had a few pilots, mostly from people who've taken my online course by the same name, Building a Second Brain, who have taken the material and taught it with their classes. These are unofficial, self-directed pilots. They've had some pretty incredible results, but in terms of like official offerings at universities, there hasn't been anything yet, although it's something I'd love to see in the future.
Because it sounds so worthwhile. It's almost like the yellow highlighter. If you go through a book and highlight it, you can flip back later on and say, gee, instead of reading 200 pages, I'm probably going through about the top 30 either quotes or information that I really want to retain. And it almost sounds like something as a concept that would be the visual end of it. Now, I read in your book there's 4 superpowers of a second brain. I think that was on page 34. Can you give us some insights into what you mean by the superpowers of a second brain?
Yeah, I think often people want to know, what is this for? Right? Like, what does a second brain, this digital note-taking system, allow me to do? And there's 4 main, I would think of them as capabilities. The first one is to make your ideas concrete, right? When an idea is just in your head, it's kind of vague, it's mysterious, it's unclear, you don't know if it's good, if it's not good. You have to make your ideas concrete to begin to work with them, to begin to see what they are objectively, to begin to improve them. That's the first one. The second is to reveal new associations. Often you have a bunch of different ideas that might seem random or disconnected, but you really need like a canvas where you can play with them. You can see how they relate, juxtapose one on the other, see how they compare and contrast. That is another thing you can only do in a place outside your head. Third, incubate ideas over time. So often you just need an idea to simmer. You need to kind of let it sit on the back burner for a while. It's really hard to do that with your biological brain, right? Ideas tend to be forgotten, tend to be lost. Whereas with a second brain, you can revisit something from last week, last month, last year, years ago, just as easily as something that you learned today. And fourth, it sharpens your unique perspective. So, what is the point of having a lot of ideas and a lot of insights? I think there's something they can add up to, which is your unique lens on the world. What is the way that you, beyond the specific pieces of knowledge that what is your way of seeing, your way of viewing the world, your way of thinking through problems, the way you have of working with others? I think that's really where a career that you're proud of comes from, where a business comes from. It's not just like one insight, but a process for making insights. And you can really only develop a process like that when you have a place outside of your mind where things can concretely be developed and refined over time.
You mentioned in your book the term recency bias. How does a second brain overcome that? What is recency bias, and how does the second brain overcome that?
Yeah, this comes from something I observed in organizations, both in previous jobs that I had and companies I consulted with, which is when it's time to have some ideas, usually what happens is people get into a room and they go, let's do a brainstorm, right? The brainstorm is the universal tool for anyone who wants to come up with some ideas. And it's better than nothing. I mean, it's better than nothing for sure. But it always struck me that we would get into a room with a whiteboard, 3 or 4 or 5 people, and we would just think of stuff, right? We would just make stuff up, invent things. And of course, what are we drawing on? We're drawing on the very most recent things that we've thought about, things that happened today, maybe yesterday, this week, maybe last week, right? But if I ask you, what were you doing 2 weeks ago today? What were you thinking about a month ago today? It's like,
right. No, exactly. And it hit me so much because if you asked me 2 hours ago, that I can get maybe yesterday. But like you said, if you said 2 weeks ago, this same date, roughly the same time, no clue.
Yeah, it's all gone. The past is, evaporated. And so I think there's something superior to a brainstorm, which is a second brainstorm, which is you go through your notes, which do not have a recency bias. When you do a search, you search for, I don't know, culture or creativity or personal growth or profitability or whatever term you're interested in. Your second brain will bring up results from every point in the past without biasing you towards the ones that just happened. And so there's a tremendous power when in any given moment, you can draw on the sum total of a lifetime, many years of thinking, rather than only drawing on one day or 1 week of thinking.
Tiago, once again, I want to let our audience know if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Tiago, Tiago. Last name is Forte, Forte. His book is Building a Second Brain. We're going to ask him, number one, where we can get the book, and number two, if there's a website where we can learn more about this.
Sure. The website is buildingasecondbrain.com, where you can find all the information you need. And in terms of purchasing it should really be available in most major retail outlets, both online, Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, as well as, physical bookstores.
Now, and again, we will give that one more time. So if you didn't get it down, please make sure you just jot it down someplace, because I know it always happens. Someone's going to say, what was that guy's name the other day? What was the name of his book? Oh, he was so interesting. So just put it on a piece of paper. And if you follow Tiago's advice, you'll know just where to find it, because your second brain will tell you exactly where you left that piece of paper. And you can go out and get the book, or at least talk to your neighbor about it. Tiago, if someone is interested in this, what should they expect? Is this like trying to learn French? You'll know a few words after 3 months, and maybe you can point to a hamburger or a glass of wine, but kind of not sentences? Or is it something that if we spend 4 days, we could really get a grasp on it and get our life in order? What should we expect?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would think of it like budgeting. Budgets are this thing. There's many ways to do a budget, and budgets can take many forms, and your budget is unique to you. The things you spend money on, the places where your money comes from, the things you invest in, the ways that you save are all unique to you. And yet you can pretty much say universally, everyone should have a budget, right? And the same is kind of true of a second brain, of a knowledge management system. Even, whether you think your work is creative, whether you're a knowledge worker, whether your ideas and your creative outputs are how you make a living, there is information in your life that you are managing right now, right?
Correct. No, absolutely. And I think I do it the wrong way, because I rip something out of a magazine, or I'll write down a quote, but then I don't have an organization for the next step where I put it. And then when I have to find it, I say, I know I have that. So it either takes me an extremely long time to find it, or I can't find it, to be honest.
Yeah, this is such a good observation, because just notice, I would assert that the people listening to this show, you're already doing 80 or 90% of what's necessary. Aren't you already reading things? Aren't you already listening to things, learning things, having insights, having conversations, having meetings? Aren't you already saving some things? Every time you download a PDF, every time you save a bookmark, every time you like a social media post, every time you subscribe to a podcast, you're reaching out into the ether, and you're plucking a piece of information and saying, I want to keep this, I want to save it, I want to revisit it. That's the hard part, right? It's learning things and doing things and having experiences that is hard. All I'm saying is to do an additional 5 or 10% and route all of the most interesting stuff, only the best stuff that you find, into one single centralized place, which is a notes app, digital notes app. And you know what? You probably already have, in fact, you almost certainly have a notes app on your phone right now, right? If you have iOS, an Apple device, you have Apple Notes. Android has similarly like a default notes app. And the same is true on your computer. You don't have to go out and download, much less buy any new piece of software. Just use the software that's already on your device right now.
So even better, you're not even, in quote, trying to sell us something for $29.95 or 6 easy payments of $69.95 or something. We have it, literally attached to our belt or in our pocket or pocketbook or something, but we just have to kind of get it organized and know what we're doing with it.
Yeah, in fact, I would say don't pay. You can pay for some software, but I would say don't. Stick with the basic. The basic will actually be better because it won't have as many fancy features, and it will force you to just stick to the basic acts of writing things down, organizing them, revisiting. use a free app, either one that came on your device or one you can download for free, and wait until you kind of know your needs better before paying for anything.
Now, let me ask you, because we started out and I took that comment from your book about being an information hoarder, and I'm thinking more and more you're describing me, because that's what I am in many instances. Is that our problem? Do most of us, we see those shows about hoarders on television and we're kind of shocked at all the junk they have in their house. But information-wise, is that what most of us who do? We just keep piling up, I'll save that article on golf so it'll make me a better golfer or a football player or a better exerciser or take the right vitamins, and then we don't know where it is. So is it kind of, we have too much right now and we have to kind of cull it out?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that was a good example you said. You should really think about the outcomes that you want to achieve, right? Because if you approach this from the lens of, I'm going to keep everything, you're going to fail. You're going to keep way too much, which is hoarding, right? Think about the specific things you want to achieve, you want to learn, you want to build, the results you want to create, the content, the writing you want to make, the videos you want to create, the classes you want to create, and then ask yourself, what information specifically do I need? Do I really truly need in order to produce that result? That will give you a much more narrow lens, a much more narrow filter. Because the truth is we have to constantly guard against, as I said in the book, we're exposed to 30 gigabytes a day, 30 gigabytes a day of information. And that's rapidly increasing. You don't have the space, much less the time, to be trying to save and organize 30 gigabytes a day. It's absolutely impossible. You have to find the signal in the noise. Every single day, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of news updates that don't matter. There's a lot of pointless controversy. There's a lot of people just yelling about things online. You have to filter out the noise and find, what is the signal? What is the signal for my own life, for what I'm trying to create in the world? And really focus your attention on that signal.
I think that might be the title of your next book. Find the signal, filter out the noise, because that resonates. That's one of those terms that stays with us. And I think for parents out there, this might be a great book if your child is just starting high school or college. It might be a great way to get them started in life. And even if they only get 10 or 20% of it, remembering how much they are cutting out and stopping from hoarding this information that really is just getting in the way of their actual learning and perhaps holding back their grades. Tiago, we want to thank you so much for being with us today. Again, we want our audience to know the book is Building a Second Brain. It's by our guest, Tiago, Tiago, last name Forte, Forte. And please give us the website once again.
Yeah, it's buildingasecondbrain.com.
Thank you for being with us today. I greatly appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Bill. It was a pleasure.
I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.